everyone. Thank you for joining us on our JLC podcast. We're the Jesus Life Company. We're an organization, nonprofit organization that's dedicated towards spreading the gospel and bringing the awareness of Christ to the world by doing the things that Jesus did in his ministry. Jesus didn't operate in just the four walls of the church, but Jesus went out into the community. He helped those in need. He taught. And so our organization is designed to mirror those same tools and those same strategies to be able to go out and have an impact in the community. Let the world know that Jesus is alive and that Jesus is able to, his love is able to bring change and bring an impact to a world that really needs it. I am Colin Mcdermott. I'm the vice president of the Jesus Life Company, and I'm here alongside with my guest, Minister Catherine Kennard, our engagement ambassador, our treasurer Henry Mark Talier. And today we just want to talk about one of the topics that is very important when it comes to discussing the ministry of Christ and how we as people can be Christ-like. And so today we kind of just want to have a conversation to talk about the importance of compassion, the compassion of Christ. One thing that when you look at the ministry of Jesus and all that he did, he always had compassion for those that he served. And so it's a huge responsibility for us to represent Christ in that manner and be able to have that compassion on our brothers and sisters and those that are in our community. And so one thing that we want to begin to discuss is really just what is compassion and how does compassion work? How does compassion apply today in our society with all that's going on? How is it applicable today? So I kind of just want to throw the question out to our guest today. And in your own words, just kind of describe what do you consider the compassion of Christ? When you think of compassion, what does that make you think of, and how do you find it applicable to today?
Go ahead, Henry.
For sure. Thank you, Pastor Colin, for the introduction as well. And I think this is a really important conversation. When we think about the compassion of Christ, the first thing that comes to me is love. When I hear the word compassion, the definition, you hear concern, but with Christ, it was a genuine love for people. And we think about why he came to enlighten, the darkness that men were in. And so concerning that love, that care for people and understanding the state of mankind at the time, I really think when I think about Christ and his compassion for people, it was to help anybody in need. Right. And I really feel like that's important to talk about today, especially in a culture where sometimes we necessarily don't feel like everybody's worthy of atonement. Not everybody's worthy of making changes. Not everybody's worthy of a second chance. But here Christ really comes in and sort of breaks that idea apart and shows that everybody's worthy of the second chance, because we will all fall short of the glory of God. So when I really think about compassion, it's really about that love that Christ had for us and the willingness to serve others regardless of their need.
Yeah, 100%. I really like that, Henry. I liked how you used the word second chance and servitude, serving others. And I'm a Google person. I'm like, sometimes, I don't want to assume that I know everything, because we know these words, but I don't want to assume that I know it. So I'm like, let me look at the word, but not just the word, but the etymology of the word, meaning how it's broken down in its original form. And when you read the word compassion in its original form, it's a Latin word, and it means to suffer with. Com meaning with, passion meaning to suffer. So meaning I'm suffering with you. So compassion means like you see somebody suffering, you don't just pass them by and let them suffer on their own. You get in there with them so that if you suffer with them or serve them in some capacity, you can relieve their suffering, right? So I think compassion in today's age is about not just passing somebody by. You see someone down and out. We're in such a me-oriented society, me-oriented mindset. Like, I gotta take care of me. I gotta take care of my family. I gotta take care of mine. I don't have time to think about anyone else. And because we don't suffer with other people, we can't relieve the suffering that's going on in the world, and it just grows and grows. Whereas Jesus, he wasn't the type of person to see you suffering just pass you by. Jesus wouldn't do that. He made time to stop, right? He wasn't like the legalistic people in that time that I won't even stop to help you because I'm on my way to the temple to pray. What point is it to go and pray that God will heal the world when someone is suffering right here now that you can help if you would just suffer with them? Show compassion. So I think it's such a relevant thing to talk about in today's day and age because we are very me oriented in our thinking, very selfish. And compassion means, like you said, to serve others, to think about others, and to give that person a second chance. Maybe sometimes you think, well, they're in that position because they put themselves in that position. Like, let them suffer with it. No, but compassion says, no, I'm gonna get in the trenches with them and suffer with them and help them to relieve that suffering. It's all about love, like we said. That's all it boils down to. It's another form of love. It's not pretty. I'm suffering with you, so it's not a pretty thing, but that is love, and that's what Jesus did.
I love the. Go ahead, Pastor Colin.
Oh no, go ahead.
I just love the idea about the etymology of the word, and I didn't know to suffer with, and it puts into greater context the sacrifice that was made. Really, when you think about it, the fact that Jesus didn't have to, but he was willing to do the will of the Father. So he gave up his rightful place at the right hand of the Father, to come down and show the way. And so to give all of that up, to give all of, not necessarily sovereignty, because he still had that, not necessarily his divinity, but the at least that form at that moment. And so we understand that, he didn't have to, but he did. And it puts really into a greater context the love that he's willing to sacrifice that for our sakes. Mm-hmm. And I think, going back to, you made another great point about the me-ness. And I do see that, I think with people who are closer to my age, not to age people or anything, but I think that's, for somebody who's, more closer to being removed from college and so on and so forth, it's always been a mindset of do what you got to do. I have to do this. I, and we sometimes, it's tainted in the ways we, interact with one another, how we help one another, and even by as far as leadership, how people view leadership. People don't view leadership as something that's compassionate and serving and willing to help others and suffer with others, but more of like I control and I direct. But it always goes back to that relatability, the ability to create a connection, create a bond. And when you look at the documented interactions that Christ had with people, it was always to create the bond and to teach out of love. And I think that's what we're really missing right now.
It's so true. And I really like that point about the suffering with that you made, Ms. Catherine, because I think, especially, and to combine that with the whole idea of everything being about me, I think a huge thing is that when it comes to today, our compassion has a limit, right? It feels like I will suffer with you for a little bit, but then I still got to go do me. We never really get to the point where we really get down in the trenches to really, we'll do something. We'll make a nice post on social media, right? And we'll post the hashtags and we'll participate in the challenge, quote unquote, challenges to bring awareness. But a lot of times we don't go beyond that. It's always just, I'll do a post on social media, but that's the limit. That's the limit to how far I'll take it. And I think one of the things that made Christ's ministry so powerful is that he didn't just do the bare minimum. It was always sticking with you until you got better, until you got healed, until you could see, right? Being able to really be in there until there was a change. And I think that's something that we definitely need more of today, is actually being consistent and sticking with it when it comes to having that level of compassion to help people.
Yeah, I really like that, because even as we started talking about, the whole me thing, while that's happening, you also simultaneously have happening, people are more conscious of others, and you have social responsibility, and companies wanting to do things to, show compassion in whatever way, whether it be through people, through the environment, whatever. And it's become a responsibility. It's become a duty. So people are aware, but their awareness is because it's a duty. It's because it's the right thing to do. And so that's why there's a limit. Whereas with Jesus, this is not, I'm doing this because it's my responsibility. This is what I believe at my core, that that I want to do, that I want to love you unconditionally at my core. So it didn't have a limit, right? So I think that's something we also have to pay attention to, is like, is it something you believe at your core? Do you believe in what you're doing? Or are you just doing it because it's a trend? Or are you just doing it because it's the right thing to do? But as soon as you say, I did my part, then you're ready to walk away. Whereas the true, someone showing true compassion would stick with it until there's a change, like you were saying. Can we grow to a level of maturity where we will be committed to something enough where we will stick with it until we see that change?
Wow. Just hearing the both of you, and the thought came into mind when you, Pastor Colin, when you said, there's a limit to how much compassion, and then Mr. Catherine, you also expounded on it. It made me think that we put quantities, or we try to quantify compassion. And especially in the social media age, where there's an obligation, or everybody feels like there's a duty to be responsible, to hold people accountable. We try to quantify, to almost say, hey, I've done my part.
Yeah.
And instead of saying that, seeing or understanding that, compassion is more than just quantity or how much you did, but just the love behind it and your willingness to do it. I think we need to stop, quantifying love, because you can't put a quantity on love.
Sign on it.
This is going to be, I forgot the name of the singer, but my parents used to play a song in the car, and it's a mother talking to her son, and she says, "For the things that I've done for you, no cost, no cost, no cost." And she was trying to prove a point that my love was priceless. I couldn't put a quantity on it, because there's no way I can quantify it, because money doesn't explain it. No amount of money could explain it. And so even though as we get into like the social media age now, where it's becoming more and more of a necessity for any brand or any business or any person, even ministry wise, I hope that we don't lose sight of true compassion, that genuineness. And I think it starts with the belief that we were talking about. And believing, to me, is interesting, because a lot of people say they believe, but the actions don't necessarily reflect that. But I think it's when you believe to the point where you change your perspective. Now I think that's true believing, because now the mindset has changed. A lot of times, even with new believers, right, you would say a new person into the fold, it's a hard thing, because the perspective hasn't completely shifted. Now they understand, but it's the application. So now I think we have to move from where, okay, I've done this, I've done that, but I no longer can quantify compassion. And in order for me to have the long-lasting effect that I desire, I need to change my perspective about compassion and how I help others.
Yep.
Absolutely. And it's true with that, because especially in this time, as you mentioned, with social media, it almost feels disingenuous in that, right? You'll see different things happening. You'll see these posts on social media where people will post them, record themselves doing things for others. And sometimes you begin to question the motives. It's like, are you doing this to build your brand? Or are you doing this because you really care? Like, you see those videos where someone will post, oh, their classmate didn't have any sneakers, and it's a whole recording of someone bringing them a pair of sneakers, or someone who is homeless and a person giving them money or taking them to the store to get something to eat, all these things, it's like it feels disingenuous sometimes, but on the flip side, it's like people want to see things that are being done. So it's like,
Right.
how do you truly express compassion or identify when someone it is expressing genuine compassion, authentic compassion in this kind of time where everyone's always trying to build their brand, trying to build their following?
Well, I think like first and foremost, it's important to not try to identify someone's compassion, because that's like saying, "Oh, I can judge your love." You can't judge someone else's love or compassion. They have to know that they have that for themselves. But I think even as we walk in compassion for ourselves, it's important that whatever you're doing on social media or on the internet or whatever you're doing, you're displaying, make sure that you are also able to do that when there's no pictures, when there's no post, when nobody knows about it, that's still something that you will do and that you believe in doing even when nobody sees, because that's what integrity is all about, right? Who you are when nobody's looking. Can you still do and operate in the same way even when there's no recognition? Are you still doing it? If not, you have to question for yourself, is my compassion genuine? And that's a responsibility you have to yourself, not necessarily for people.
Wow. And it's really interesting you say that, because I think about, I've been reading Matthew a little bit, and as early on in the book, Jesus is teaching about giving. And even just things that you do to build upon your faith, doing it in private, and the value in doing that, because now it's the true care. You spoke about people who pray out loud to sound eloquent, but I do that in secret, or I give in secret and not in front of people to show, oh, I am a good person. And I think it's really about what are you trying to bring glory to? Because at the end of the day, God may put it in our hearts to give to somebody or show compassion to somebody. When I go and record it, it brings the attention to me. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for it, as Pastor Colin and you too, Minister Catherine, have also mentioned, right? There is a place for it, but I think there has to be a consistency in giving behind closed doors, because I really do believe that it was done in secret that is really glorified. It's just done in secret, because
Absolutely.
those are the moments that really mature you, that really grow you, and sometimes when you're in front of the camera, you change, you act a little different, right. And that's true for everyone. In some way you may change. And so I think it's the genuineness of the heart, where you have to be able to, I'm doing this behind closed doors because I don't want anybody else to know about it. It's nobody else's business. It's between me, you, and God. I was put on my heart to give you here. Right. It reminds me, parents don't like when their kids say, I did this for you, I did that for you. But it reminded me, because my mom would have done so many other things for me that I would probably didn't know about, or the world don't know about, and she would never tell me. Right. Yeah. And so there's a love there. Right. I'm using my mother a lot because I know her compassion, of her love. I think about it. But that's the love that I hope, we can see, even in building your own brand. And I think that if you are building your own brand, you have to, in a way, it's difficult because you're at the spotlight of it, but you have to be able to take the step back and give God the glory in it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like we've been saying, there's a place for it, because I think people want to see compassion. They're inspired by it. We want to see positive things on the internet. There's so much garbage that you could be seeing. We want to see good things. So there's definitely a place for it. But I think, like, as we're saying, if these are things that you're practicing even before you ever take a picture, before you ever take a video, if this is something I'm already doing, then when there is no post, or when it's not trending anymore, then I'm still doing it, and that's the place that I think we need to get to, where you're doing it no matter what.
Yeah. It's funny because, especially when you're an organization working towards one, I love that idea. We do definitely need more positive things to be posted, because it's so sad that it's always the garbage and the scandals and the trash that begins to trend and gets the most views and things like that. And I think to some of both of your points is that it has to be a consistency on both in front of the camera and behind the camera,
Mhm.
because as an organization, sometimes it's when you want to go for funding and you want to get support, right? A lot of these other organizations they want to know what you're doing in the community, or what you're doing, or what you plan to do with these funds. And so it's like it's almost necessary that you have to kind of record these
Yeah.
kind of things. But I think when you keep the main thing, that it's not about just getting funding or just getting support, but this is something that we really do. This is something that we're really about, and whether you record us or not, this is what we're going to do. This is how our plan to be effective, our plan to have an impact. So whether the cameras are on or they're off, we're still going to do it. And if you want to join and be a part of this movement, then here's what we can show you. Here are the metrics. Here are the videos. Here are the posts. These are the things that we're doing. But just to you have to understand that that's not our drive. It's not The drive is not to get the funding and to get money and to get support, but we really want to make an impact. We really want to
Right.
make a change. And I think that's what was so great about Jesus's ministry, is that he wasn't trying, whether people talked about him or spread what he did, or more times than not, Jesus always, when he healed somebody, he was like, don't, just go to the priest, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Go home. Don't tell anybody. But they still would tell people, and that's how his name started to get around. Is that because that was who he is, and because that was his ministry, that was his heart, that was his focus. Whether he got the popularity, whether he got the attention, it didn't matter. And I think, especially as an organization, as a nonprofit organization, that's what we have to strive for. That's what we're working towards, is that we're trying to make an impact. We're trying to do our part. We're not trying to gain great media attention or all of these other things. If it comes, it comes, but that's not the focus. And I think it's important that, especially with this time with social media, that people shift from that being focused on myself. How is this going to affect my brand? How is this going to look to the world? Rather, shifting from that perspective and really getting back to that place of compassion and empathy.
Mhm.
You know, what I think we lack empathy in today's time. It's not until you really go through what someone has gone through, then you really start to have empathy. And I think it's unfortunate. You shouldn't have to be homeless to have compassion for the homeless, right?
Right.
You shouldn't have to go hungry to have compassion for those who are hungry, you know. And I think it's something that we have to start practicing more as a society. We got to start practicing that more, and not waiting until we hit that rock bottom. Then we can say, "Oh, I understand what you're going through."
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it boils down to a need for a change in the mindset, right? Because whatever you feed yourself, that's how you're gonna live out. That's how you're gonna operate. So if we feed ourselves more of an understanding that we need to honor people, honor our fellow man, right? We live to
Hmm.
honor God, but we also live to honor our fellow man. And when there's a lack of knowing how to honor people, no, you won't have empathy, right? You're only going to think of yourself. But as our mindset changes, that's why the Bible says you got to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, or else you never do this thing right, right?
Right.
Until that mindset changes, we're going to, you know, do what everybody else is doing, or operate like everybody else because of what we allow ourselves to be fed. But you gotta, really, there really needs to be a mindset change. That's basically what it boils down to.
And I also think that we've gotten to a point where we do a lot of and whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, instead of understanding another person's perspective or understanding another person's story, we do a lot of comparisons sometimes.
Mm.
And typically when people say comparison's the thief of joy, you talk about it from yourself, but I also think that it prevents you from helping someone else. It prevents you from identifying, oh wow, you went through that. I understand, right? I may not have experienced it, but okay, here's my love to you because of that. I think we compare, and I say this because on the level where you have a colleague or you have a friend, you should be able to show compassion to that person. But even then, you have situations where we compare experiences to say, oh well, I had it worse, or nobody
Mhm.
helped me, or
Mhm.
and sometimes even trap ourselves in mindsets or narratives that say, well, I made it through to this point by myself. And I'll never forget, when I was in college, I was in a meeting and somebody, I made a statement, it's like, I worked hard to get to this point. And somebody reminded me, but you did not get here alone.
Yeah.
Mm.
You didn't get here alone. The place that you are now, there were people probably supporting you. Your
Mhm.
family was supporting you. You probably had resources from somewhere come in and pour into you. And so, in the same way that people, we go through life and we've reached a point and we've gotten to a point because others have helped us. We should also share that compassion with others, because no one can make it through life alone.
No.
No matter how you want to say it, no one can make it through life alone. And I
Mm.
think getting back to that mindset and that understanding that we all need each other to support each other, to advance each other, to really sharpen one another, then the compassion will be in a better place, and it'll be in a place where more and more people can see it.
Yeah. And that on that aspect of support, right? I think we have to realize that for every opportunity that you have, there's someone out there who doesn't have that same opportunity.
Mm.
And I think a big thing that's needed is to have that mindset and that understanding that not taking it for granted what you have, and just this overall care for others, that I am where I am, right? I worked hard and I was supported to get to where I am, so now I need to pay it forward.
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of times when you have that mindset of, oh, I worked hard to get here, we fail to pay it forward. And I think that's another aspect of compassion that is often forgotten or not necessarily looked at. But we have a responsibility to pay it forward to those who don't have those opportunities. All
Yeah.
right, here I am in this position. What can I do to help others get here?
Mhm.
How can I help reach now that I'm at this level or this platform or in this level of influence? So many people that get to a platform in a level of influence, and it's almost like, they say you forgot where you came from, kind of thing.
Yep.
But how do you, now that I'm on this platform, now that I have this level of influence, how do I use that power to reach down and help somebody else? We really need to have that kind of mindset as well. In that, listen, I didn't get here by myself, but also I gotta help someone else and help give opportunities to others. But when you have this me mindset, right? You never really do those kind of things. It's always like, and we're in a society where we're always, the focus is on grinding, right? Grinding and getting yours and working hard to get yours, and you're trying to build your empire. But back to that point, no one can build on their own. No one can obtain success by themselves. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that we definitely have to consider, that when you get to a certain point, wherever that point is for you, how can you now reach back and pull those that are behind you that need help as well? I think that's such an important aspect that we forget.
Mhm. Definitely. And I think it's important to like note you don't have to be a millionaire or a multimillionaire or billionaire in order to say, okay, now I'm at this level. Let me reach out and help. At whatever level you are, like you said, you're in a better position than somebody else. You can reach at the level you are and help someone, and you don't always have to do it. You don't always have to do it alone. You can connect and lock arms with other people in order to have a stronger reach, right? When we join together, we create one big hand, that can reach and pull
Yeah.
others up. We don't have to do it alone. So that's another part of thinking, changing that mindset, right? And thinking about support and what support is. You don't have to. Some people are apprehensive about supporting because they think they have to support on their own. But if you lock arms with others, how can we gather our resources together, our gifts together, our ideas together, our talent together to help others? It makes it easier. And that support that you're providing at the level you are, even though you're not at the level where you want to be, you still want to go higher. If you're able to do that at the level that you are sowing seed for you to reach an even higher level. Why wait, right? For you to reach, to plateau, in life, at every level you are in life, you are able to reach, and your reaching is sowing a seed for you to go to higher levels just to help more.
That's so true. And I think about when, both of you have mentioned about helping one another, supporting one another. It made me think about someone who told me, we always think about networking up, but why don't we network across, right? Across something, right? Because even though I'm in this position, you may be I'm at A and you're at B, I can learn from you where you are, and you can learn from me where I'm at. And I really believe that, part of the me culture is that, the quick gratifying things that appear now. And I think we've come to a point where, I think at least people who are my age, we're so fixated on that we'll do anything for it, even if that means I'm going to neglect everybody else here. But I've come to find out that having compassion, even at this level in my life, teaches me more. Because now I've established a connection. I've established a connection to an experience I didn't have. I've connected to other people who have taught me from their own experiences, and because I've shown love, they're making me grow in love. I think that is it's powerful in that way. Pastor Colin, you mentioned about even Jesus Christ and how he didn't do anything to build his brand, and so that's a perfect example of doing what your heart or what are you led to do in terms of helping others and your brand growing by itself. The genuine care allowing you to grow and mature in that way. And I think if we get to a place of genuineness, we'll be more effective, not only showing compassion, but your outreach to people, whether it be you in a nonprofit or you in a business. It's such a thing to be relatable and to be understanding and compassionate to others, because it really promotes the growth that people really do want to see.
Yeah. So I want to throw this out there. We're in a time where cancel culture is so huge, right? And it's so big in that sometimes society, they'll cancel an individual because of a mistake that they've made. We see it all the time. So many people whose careers are ended because of a mistake that they've made in cancel culture. And my question is, how do we still maintain the Christ-like level of compassion in this time of the cancel culture? Because it's so bad to the point that even when you try to express empathy or sympathy or compassion for an individual who has been canceled, they lump you into that pool with them as well, and they want to cancel you as well. And so a lot of people tend to shy away from even expressing an ounce of compassion, right? Had a conversation with a individual who was talking about how on her job, right, after the Derek Chauvin case, the verdict, she expressed that we need to pray for him and pray that he finds Christ. And she said that everybody on her job, the people on her job, kind of were coming against her for even saying that we should be praying for him because of how egregious his what he did was. And the question is, how do we still maintain that compassion of Christ without being lumped in or being canceled as well?
Go ahead, Henry.
I'm thinking about it. It's a needed conversation, but it's such a tough question to answer because of, the reactions of people.
Right.
But I think the thing that remains true is that when you remain consistent in your behavior and consistent in your idea of compassion, regardless of who it is, the person who's doing the canceling, at some point they're going to need that compassion too for the mistake that they may have made. And I think that sometimes cancel culture makes us forget that we've all made mistakes. And I understand that it's come about for the desire of greater accountability. But accountability and compassion can coexist. They don't have to be separate.
Yeah.
And I believe that when we can show that accountability and compassion can coexist, then others will realize that too. It would, if I said that that person is not worthy of this, then that means I also believe that I must not be worthy for atonement. It's a lot of times we don't apply the same principles we apply to others to our own selves and to our own lives. So do we have double standards, or are we saying that we're perfect?
Right.
Because now we're walking a line that none of us can walk. And I really believe it's when we get to see, okay, regardless of what he did, he showed love. Regardless of what she did, she showed love. Regardless of past mistakes. And that's why when we go back to the compassion of Christ, regardless of the past, because of him, sin and shame have no dominion over me. And because of his love, I'm free. And so I can apply it to somebody else where even if they've done something wrong, even to me, I can forgive them. I can move beyond them. I think that's the thing. And I think because of social media and, we got to catch everything on camera, but these things never catch the full story sometimes either. We fall in these places where we just jump on a narrative. And so I think it's on people, it's on us, as believers, I believe as well, to be objective about everything and to have a open-mindedness. And it's really, last thing I'm gonna mention about this, I think it's really ironic actually that in this age of open-mindedness, people have actually become closed-minded.
Absolutely.
In the way where we're like, oh, let's be more accepting or more knowledgeable or more tolerable of things, we become closed-minded to people who may have a disagreement to something instead of saying, I want to hear you out, I want to learn. And I think that's allowing us to be cold-hearted, and we're not recognizing it.
Absolutely. I think you answered that perfectly. But seriously, it comes down to accountability, like you said, and what is your heart? What is your heart in this, right? Like with the example that you gave with Derek Chauvin, what is your heart? The heart of most people was that justice needs to be served. There needs to be accountability of the actions. And a lot of times when these things happen, and though they're painful, circumstances, we allow the door of offense to open. So anyone that, would defend or would show any compassion, because we don't know how to deal with our own offense, we want to cancel them. But I don't care about that stuff. I don't care about being lumped in with anybody else because I'm free. Like you said, I'm free. So what do I care about being lumped up? These people that are canceling you, what are you doing? You're canceling, but what are you doing? What are you being accountable for? So again, it boils down to people forgetting the heart behind why you were, feeling the way you were. Was it accountability or were you just offended? And I think that has a lot to do with what the things that are being canceled today. People are not canceling because it's what they believe. It's because out of their offense, they want to cancel everything. They've got these bitter roots in them,
Wow.
and then they want to attach all this other
That's deep.
stuff to what they're seeing when that's not really applicable to what's happening. You're just attaching that onto it, and it becomes this big old monster. It's a spirit of offense that people don't know how to deal with it properly. It reminds me also, there's an example of the young man who was shot in his apartment. The police officer thought it was her apartment, it was his.
Mhm.
And when she was at the trial, got her sentencing, and I believe that young man's brother gave her a hug, and the judge gave her a hug. And it
Yeah,
was
the
like people
Bible.
were in uproar about it. But it was like, this woman got the sentencing that she got. Justice was quote unquote served. But people were so upset that they were showing her love, that they were showing her compassion. I think even the example with the man who shot all those people in the church in Charleston, right? I think one of the people who gave their testimony, one of the family members, said during the trial, "I forgive you,"
Yep.
and people were in uproar. It's like, how can you be showing compassion during a painful moment like this? We're supposed to be offended, right? And it's like, you don't have to allow your offense. You don't have to allow your offense to eliminate the need for compassion. The two can coexist. Not the two can coexist, but accountability and compassion can coexist. Like you said, Henry.
Yeah, that's definitely a bar. Accountability and compassion coexist. That's really powerful. It's so true, because I think, they say the two things can be true at the same time. I think we so focused on accountability, and I throw the air quotes up because we limit accountability to our perspective and how to our to our benefits, what we feel like we can get from it. So we hold you accountable to our standard. There's no overall standard that we're holding people to. It's just it the standard is based on how I feel in that moment. And then back to what Henry said, it depends on the narrative. Whatever the narrative is, that's how we choose what is accountability, right? And I think that's something that we definitely need to adjust, and we need to fix. That we have to learn to take ourselves out of it. Take ourselves out of it, right? We we always have to view things from the perspective of God, from the perspective of Christ. How can this person be saved? How can this person's life be changed? Right? They get the justice that according to the law, they face the justice that they have. But at the end of the day, how is it a it's how do we care about their souls, and how do we care about their conditions? I've come to learn, and like I do a lot of studying of personality and behavior and all these things. And one thing I've come to realize is that no one is born bad. No one is born with or born with the consciousness of being evil or doing evil things or doing wrong things. A lot of times life situations kind of direct them and shape their personality, shape their behaviors and their attitudes, and it causes them to make certain decisions that are not necessarily the best, right? I think what we need to do more of is stop looking at just the action and just looking at the narrative, but how do we look at the condition of that person? Where did they come from? How did they grow up? I love Criminal Minds. That's one of my favorite shows, right? And watching it, you'll see these people who are serial killers doing these heinous crimes. It all comes from, oh, they were abused by their dad when they were 6, or they were abused by their mom when they were 5, and all of these things helped them created this personality that caused them to now grow up to become serial killers. How do we separate? We have to start to separate the situation or the incident, and really look at the total picture, the totality of a person's life. What did they grow? How did they grow up? What was the environment that they were in? What pushed them to this point of doing these things? When we start to look at that and just not look and move from just looking at the narrative, I think we can be even more compassionate when it comes to people. It's like the story with the woman of the woman caught in adultery. These people, they were quick to paint the narrative to Jesus. Hey, we caught her in the act. She was in the middle of it. This is what she was doing. She needs to be punished. And I believe Jesus took the time to really think and really look at, okay, what steps caused her to go into this direction. I think we all deserve grace. We all deserve a second chance, as Henry had mentioned before. We all need that second chance, or that just to take the time to consider. We don't put enough time in consideration. It's just, this is the narrative, this is the story, this is what was fit into the tweet, this is what was fit into the Instagram post, and this is what I'm going to judge and make my decision off of. And I think we really and seriously have to move from that, of just that instant moment, and really start to consider all the factors that take place in the lives of individuals.
Right. Wow. And Pastor Colin, as you were speaking, what came to mind is that, what do we even define as true justice? Because I think that determines a lot of how we behave and how we react to certain events. And when I look at, what Jesus did, true justice is really rehabilitation, not of just the person that was wronged, but also who did the wrongdoing. When you look at, even go back to the event of the woman who had committed adultery, he asked it to, if you are without sin, cast the first stone. If you haven't sinned. And he said something so powerful: your accusers are here no more. And then go and sin no more.
Right.
And so when I think about that, even though people would say, well, the woman who committed adultery, she did something that was wrong. She did something that was terrible. At the end of the day, Jesus saw where she was wrong. Not only did he show you that you were forgiven, but then, okay, now you have a new page, a new chapter. And even with, when we look at, how we deal with the justice system, even here, it's really just torment, really, in a way, degraded to second class status. So just how, our system works. And I think sometimes, because of the way our system works, is also how we react to it. And so there needs to be a overhaul, where a guy like Derek Chauvin, even though he is wrong and that he deserves a consequence, because there are always consequences for your actions, he also needs to be rehabilitated.
Yeah.
And he also needs to be treated, okay, he needs help. He needs love. At the end of the day, he may have taken somebody's life, but he still needs love. I really go back to the examples we all gave, and how people were really up in arms about the forgiveness. And it shows you that when you lack compassion, it grips you to even want to control the reactions of others.
Wow.
We talked about projection earlier, saying that this is how you feel, you're projecting, but it really, you try to control it. Oh, you're not as outraged as I am, or you're not as upset as I am. The famous quote, I forgot who it was, but to be black is to always be in a state of rage, right? And I think people sometimes, right, but some people embody that, right? And some people embody it because I'm hurt, or because something as bad happened to me, this is what I should feel. But I don't want to get to a place where that gets me so cold. And I need compassion, because that's what's going to push me and propel me forward. That pushed that woman forward, right? And Jesus' compassion never did not put somebody forward.
Yeah.
The woman with the issue of blood who reached out, it pushed her forward. Healing. The centurion whose servant was sick, healing. Peter's mother-in-law, healing. There's so many countless examples, because he just reached out, he touched, he spoke, and in those moments everything changed. And so, they should probably make a movie called The Compassion of the Christ instead of Passion of the Christ, because if you just did a study on how Jesus did, it shows us how we need to reform the way we live, the way we think about justice, the way we think about atonement, the way we think about helping others. Those things need to be changed in a way that all parties benefit, regardless of the circumstance.
And to your point, that's how things change, right? When Jesus reached out, when he did what others weren't willing to do, that made all the difference in the world, right? So if we, instead of wanting to control how other people feel, would make room for compassion, maybe things things won't change overnight, obviously, but things will move in the direction of change. So where we won't always be in this position where we have to be angry and offended all the time, right? At what point are things going to change? And it's not going to change by canceling people and being offended. It's only going to change when you show that compassion, right? Love conquers all. That's the answer. Love is what drives out darkness, like Martin Luther King said. It's that compassion that is needed, not just to correct what was, not just to justify what was wrong, but to correct it, like you said, bring a rehabilitation, right? And that's what we need in order to see that change.
Absolutely. We all have a responsibility to be that catalyst, right? We all have that responsibility, because ultimately when we take on that responsibility and we become aware and we become conscious of not taking things offensively, but really having that care and concern for others, that care and concern for others' feelings and their situations. I think when we do that, as you said, Mr. Catherine, we do create a better society. We do create better opportunities for everyone. We sow those seeds of love, right? We're in a time where there's so many seeds of hate, and it just constantly perpetuates itself, and it's constant cycle of hate, and unfortunately it's because that's what sells. But how do we change the narrative? How do we create more positive outcomes and express love in better ways, so that becomes the narrative and that becomes what sells, right? We got to kind of change that thing, in that we gotta make love sexy in the sense that we gotta make love and compassion sexy so that people can be drawn to that. But it really requires us to have that consideration, not to take offense, right? Not to try to control people's reactions and their responses, and not to try to control what we think is the right level of accountability. I think when we do these things, we can really make a huge difference. And it takes it takes work, it takes energy, but it at the end of the day, it's more meaningful to try to pursue love rather than to just pursue division and disrespect and offense and division. When we put that energy and we pursue love, you really begin to see such a great difference in the lives of people. So you know, I think we really hit some good points in the last few minutes that we have to really chat. I just want to open the floor, give opportunity. What are some things that we can start to do as individuals, as an organization, as a society, to really kind of change that narrative and really be the expression of compassion of Christ in the earth?
That's an awesome question. And as we're talking here, it made me think about the source. What's the source of hatred and not caring for one another? And really and truly, the root of the answer is sin. And so, what does sin beget? It begets more sin, and sin, you can tell the fruits of sin, right? It will be hatred, it'll be division. It will not be anything to unite people. And so I do believe that this is the issue of the heart, because that's where everything begins. And if we can really target the hearts of men, we really can make changes there. once again, it would be a dream world to really say everybody's a believer. Dream world, dream situation. However, I do believe that even, from both a spiritual and a mental level, take the time to express love through your life and be consistent, regardless. I think it would combat sort of the way things are. And I say that because a lot of times people's compassion is conditional. It's
Yeah.
never unconditional. And so for us, regardless of the conditions that are there, we should have compassion on someone and never be afraid to express it, because the expression of love is what's going to create that change. People, unfortunately, most of the times are seers and then believers, rather than the reverse. So in this day and age, it is on us, and this is part of the light that we shine here, right? This is the part of the reason why we are the salt of the earth. And so when we understand, our role in this, we should not be afraid to change, and then or show compassion. But then also, it's also, we talked about the justice system, and it's also a legislative level, and things on that. So I think we could begin to brainstorm for hours on end, honestly, about just different ways you can attack it, from at different levels and different sectors of life. But I really believe that every individual who believes needs to adapt and understand and have the perspective of compassion on them all the time.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think, like you said, we have to be that catalyst, we have to be that change that we want to see. We can't wait for somebody else to be the change. We have to be that change. So even if it's something as simple as you see something's trending, it's like we see things are trending and we watch it too. It's negative, it's not fruitful, you just add into it. You just add into the trend. Let's not jump on these trends. Let's stand out. Let's be that catalyst. Or if everyone's saying something negative about something, let's be the one to say, hey, ease up. Hey, show some love. Hey, this person probably just needed a hug. Instead of jumping on that trend, we want to make compassion sexy again. We want to, just be consistent and being able to just put out things that are positive. The scripture that comes to mind is the scripture says, casting down every imagination and high thing that exalt itself against the knowledge of God. So like when these things rise up, we cast it down. We don't participate in it. That's part of being the catalyst. You don't participate in all of that negativity and all of those things that are, the opposite of compassion. We have to be that catalyst. And I love how you even mentioned about how boils down to sin, right, Henry? And I was watching something this week, and it said that sin basically, in its simplest terms, the word sin in Hebrew means to fail, right? And what are you failing at? You're failing either to honor God or you're failing to honor people. Because that's our two main responsibilities in life, to honor God and to honor people. So any sin we commit is either dishonors God or, it's dishonoring people. So if you see that we're doing something that doesn't honor people, don't participate in it. Let's shift the culture, be that catalyst, be that change, because it is our job to be not sinning, right? But to always have that mindset that I want to honor God and I want to honor my fellow man, and just let that be your lifestyle. Let your light shine.
Absolutely. No, I was second and third both of your points, in that we have to be that example. We have to always show a better way. You know what I mean? We have to always maintain that consistent character. I think a few things that we hit that is worth stressing is the importance of consistency, the importance of consideration, and the idea that we have to be able to pay it forward and help others, and not just think about ourselves, but really think about those that are around us, those that are in our sphere, and really making the steps and the strides to shift the narrative and change the culture and build an environment. One thing that I've come to realize is that people at their core desire love. And It doesn't matter how tough you feel you are, how hard in your heart is. We all are looking to be loved. And when we start to think on those terms and really love people in spite of their mistakes and their flaws, and in spite of what they're going through, I think we can truly create a safe environment where people can feel love, people can feel secure, and then it'll cause changes and shifts in mindsets and behaviors. And as we start to do those things and pay it forward, I think that we can really truly make an impact. It starts with just one person having an impact with one, and then causing that to multiply and grow and really truly have an impact. And as we wrap up, I want to leave us with this scripture of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. It says, finally, all of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. It's a mandate that we ought to be like-minded, that we ought to be sympathetic, we ought to love one another, we ought to be compassionate and humble. And I think when we have all of these things, we truly show the life of Christ, and we truly become examples of Christ. And that's all that we're working towards, is to be like him and to be examples in whatever industry, whatever sector we're in. You can still be like Christ on your school campus. You can still be like Christ in on your job, or in your nonprofit, or in the education, or in media, or in sports. You can still be like Christ and not compromise who you are. And when we have these root foundation beliefs and this mindset, it really can cause a change in the earth that we want to see. So, with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. I thank you so much, Minister Catherine, Brother Henry. Thank you so much for starting this conversation, having this conversation. It's something that we need to have, and something that we need to continue. To all those that are tuning in, that are listening, we appreciate you taking the time. And I encourage you to continue to live the life of Christ, continue to be passionate, continue to have that compassion for your brothers and sisters. They may not look like you, they may not talk like you, they may not come from where you come from, they may not have your history or your present, but when we have compassion, we will show that we are truly like him, and we are truly examples of him, and we can truly make a difference in the world. So thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it, and we hope that you have a blessed evening. God bless everyone.